Okay. We're on. So the first was the jigsaw.
Yes. I'm just emailing you right now.
Yeah, I guess we could just start with all those different articles.
Yeah. Hey, this is almost the one that I read.
Really?
But then I read a different one.
It's funny because I went to the Bellingham Public Library and they had like barely anything, and like the librarians didn't really know what to look for, and so that was in itself kind of something interesting, like how it's not even really
easy access.
Yeah, still. But and I was surprised, like a lot of them were in other locations in Whatcom County, like in the county, and I'm like, I feel like they would be more of use in like the more urban areas, because I feel like still out in the county that's not as accepted.
Mm-hmm.
It's not good. Corey's on her way. Anyways, but this book is here at this library, and I couldn't remember the name of it. And so I was looking for another book in the children's section at the Bellingham Public Library, and then I saw this, and I was like, oh, perfect. That's the one I wanted to get.
I liked that one.
Because I had read it before, and it's pretty like simple, but for like younger kids where you're just introducing the concept in a way, for like those that maybe haven't ever seen families that aren't heterosexual, then it's kind of like
There's
subtle
other
introduction.
Ones too, which is nice. Just like an introduction to like
all family. Which makes them seem, like it's not like they're so different or anything.
Yeah, it's not like separating
everyone.
It's not like focusing on one like that, how that one does. It's kind of like
right.
Yeah, the one that I picked, I don't have it with me right now,
Mm-hmm.
but it's called the Ballerino Nate. And it's about this like little mouse who's a boy who wants to be a ballerina, and just kind of like that gender role,
right.
like clash, and everything like that. And so it's cute because it's not people, it's mice, and stuff like that. And so I liked it because of I don't know the kind of it is for younger kids, just because it's kind of like that first exposure, like, hey, these stereotypes exist, but you don't have to follow them and stuff like that. So
didn't one of the articles we read talk about like using animals to represent them though, like as one of the like things to look for when critically analyzing the children?
I don't remember.
Yes.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't remember which one, but it was, I think it's a Word document.
Yeah.
That it had like what to look for and what not to look for.
I felt like some of them were like, I don't know, I just felt like it almost covered everything though. Like
maybe.
With the Native American one, for instance, I was very I understood like, oh, do this instead of this instead of this. But this one was just like, don't look for any of these things. That makes sense. And it didn't really give. Okay, I mean, it gave a little bit at the end about like what to look for, but I felt like it wasn't as helpful as the Native American one.
Well, so there was that Word document, and then mine even touched a little bit on. I mean, I felt like it didn't really talk about like what to look for and what not to look for, but in my jigsaw, I was supposed to like look at the ways in which it would be beneficial to have children's literature that is representing that in this whole topic that we're discussing this week, which to me makes sense. It goes along with all the other previous weeks on how you want to be represented in your book as a child. Like, it makes you feel better, it makes you relate and understand that it's okay and all that. And so that's kind of just what mine covered. It didn't really cover what the other Word document covered on like what to look for, what not to look for. So that's pretty much.
Wait, which one was yours again?
Mine was the forget the last name, starts with a C.
What was the name of the article?
It's, let me see. I don't remember. I just have my stuff here. I should remember. I'm the one who read it and had to respond to it.
Was it a PDF?
Yeah.
Was it out front?
No.
That one was mine.
It was.
Was it this
that
one?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Casement
breaking the silence.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah, this one about
yeah, just like
literature.
to incorporate it, but it didn't. It talked about like first it briefly talked about like statistics, and then it went into how it's considered to some multicultural literature and to others that doesn't fit into that category.
What do you guys think about that?
I
don't think it's not. I guess it has its own.
See, like I guess that my view of like culture is like something that's tied to like even like your ethnicity, and I don't know, like something that's like.
But then there's like.
I don't know.
There's like. I'm trying to think of an example, because there'll be like groups that are just like, oh, the culture of the group, you know?
Yeah, or like the culture
like
of a city.
Culture, like deaf culture, exactly. Yeah. So is there it's
I guess,
LGBTQ culture?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess.
I mean, it's a group of people with shared experiences.
True.
So, but there's not just like one shared background.
True.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess in some ways, culture can be looked at as just like a grouping, or it could be looked at as just ethnicity, or just race, or just even gender, like that. That's a culture or something. Like I feel like when I think of it, I feel like culture is like the umbrella, and then there's just like tons of things that could come off of like what is underneath culture, like that you could categorize groups as, like, or books as, or something like that.
Right.
An interesting thing that I like kind of thought about when reading this article though was like, I don't know, there's a lot of interesting things that they talked about, but something that stood out to me was that I think that In Our Mother's House is the first LGBTQ themed children's book I've ever read.
It was for me.
It was for me, and like I never
and other than
was exposed.
Yeah.
I've only like read young adult novels with that theme for like fun. Like I never like, and I didn't even know that's what it was going to be about either. I just was reading a book and I was like, oh, but
it wasn't like you specifically chose it for that purpose.
And like I never, in elementary school and junior high, it makes sense because I went to like a private elementary school, and then I was homeschooled for junior high. So, but then I was surprised thinking back like to public high school when I went, like we never read anything or talked about it.
No, it wasn't brought up in any way at my high school. Not until the year after I left did they have like a club, an alliance club. And I was honestly surprised because of the school that I come from. It's like in the rural county of Whatcom County, and like I don't know, I just feel like they're all very conservative out there and have really conservative views, and so it was cool to see that they had gotten that started, and that there were students that were attending that could come together and like hadn't had that before that now could. But yeah, I was I don't know. I feel like that was like one way that showed to me that like that it's like on its way to becoming much more recognized and everything. But I feel like it's still so new. I don't know. To like be socially accepted and like supported and represented in public schools. But just to highlight on the key points of that article, just to kind of summarize it, it said that one of the most effective ways for schools to become sensitive to gay and lesbian peoples in children's literature. I don't know why they like specifically only touched on those two, but I'm assuming they mean everything. The article's really old. It's like from the 80s, but that's just something to note. And then vocal conservative books have negative reactions to the content of books, and as a result, books go out of print. And so it just kind of ties with what Joy said in her whole part of what she was talking about, and how like how she could only find like the In Our Mother's House book like as one of the like best books because there are still so little out there. It just like kind of reconfirmed that. And then some are under the impression that if you have homosexual books in your classroom, then you are promoting it. So like as a teacher, like
telling kids.
But you're like, this is what you should like consider, not like if they already, I don't know, have those.
I feel like a lot of adults or like a lot of people have the fear that if we educate the kids about this idea young, that more of them are going to choose, be like, oh, like well, maybe
think that it is a choice, and not that it just like is, not a choice. Yeah, that, I mean, because I talked a little bit of this in my post and just where like I come from and like my background and how it influences me to think, and like I have to admit that I have had that fear like as a teacher. Like it's not a fear, it's more like these kids are so young, so how are they able to like understand in a way that like that isn't a choice for people, and that they just they're that way, and like that maybe they'll take it their own way and think like, oh, this is now like they're doing that, so I can do that kind of thing. Not like that they just automatically feel that way, and that's what, I don't know. I've thought in that way before, where I'm like, if I show them all this, then they're going to think that it's a choice, not that it's just the way some people are. So, yeah. And then the last point was children's literature that has a theme of gay or lesbian people are meant to be imaginative fiction, not meant to inform others about what it is like. And I thought that was interesting, that might get mixed up for some that are reading children's literature, that like, or especially kids, like what they read is, I don't know, that it's meant to be however the way it's perceived, and then it might not be the case. And so even like this book, like kids that read it they might not see what we saw, and how like the neighbor was really like cruel to that family and not accepting and welcoming of them. But if they were to notice that in it, then I don't know, they could like fear that like if they have family members that have who are that way, that they have to fear that others aren't going to be accepting of them. I don't know, like that is always going to be the case. I just thought that kind of tied into that point that the article brought. That like, because of the way that it's perceived in this book doesn't mean it's always going to be that way across. If that makes sense.
I mean, something that I kind of like thought about when I was reading that book though is I loved that the children in the story were just so like, our family is just the way it is, and I love it, and they don't like even consider the fact that they're different. And that's like super, I don't know what I'm trying to say about that part, but I felt like it was slightly unrealistic, because I feel like kids are aware of these things, and kids are aware when they look around that their family is different, and they are like, normally I think that the kids would have realized that the neighbors were being that way because their family was different. Because kids are more perceptive than I feel like they made this book seem. And I guess that wasn't really the point of the story, but I just thought it was kind of unrealistic.
That makes me think about the article that you read. And I think one of the traps I remember reading in that list of like books, don't use books that do this, was books where it's like overly perfect and happy, and it's just like there's not really any conflict, and even when there is conflict, like with the neighbor, it's like,
and then at the end the whole neighborhood hugs them, which is really sweet and accepting, and that I do like that, but I just don't think it's realistic.
I think though I agree, but I also think that this book wasn't about realistic stuff. I think that it was more about the idea that because when I was reading it, I could connect with it, because it's like, I came from a loving family. I came from a supportive family. And even though it looked different, like it was still that loving. And they really like went off on the, like every room represented all these memories and all of these things. And like, I feel like if you grow up in a loving family, and a supportive family, like you have those same,
Yeah.
you know, ideas.
Mhm.
And so it's like, I feel like even though it doesn't hit on all of like the hard stuff life puts at you, it hits on like the stuff that a lot of people can connect with. And like,
Sure.
I think the book's purpose was to show the similarities of a loving
Yeah.
family, no matter what it looks like. And so even though it may not be realistic and it kind of brushes over the
Mhm.
conflict, I don't
That's a
think
good
this
point.
isn't like it's not a like, this is what's happening to people who
Yeah,
are
that's
different.
true.
That's a good point.
Like, it's more of just like, here are the similarities. Here's how you can connect to it. Here's, you know,
Yeah.
that like,
Yeah,
if
like,
you
oh,
see
I do
something
that with my
different,
family.
right,
Right.
like there's still those similarities. There's still like that love, that support. Like, it really like focused on how much like these people loved their kids.
Yeah.
And it's just like, you know,
Yeah.
just because they're different doesn't mean that they don't love their kids.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Type of
Totally.
thing. Like, and so I think that was the focus of the book, instead of just like, let me go through the whole history, or not the history, but like the reality of
Yeah.
a lesbian
makes
couple.
sense.
I don't know. That's what I took it as, just because, yeah, it's all happy and cheery and stuff like that, but it also ends like a feel good book, I guess.
Yeah.
But
I just feel like when I'm reading these books, I just never know like how critically I'm supposed to look at it or like what I'm supposed to think of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know like.
Well, that's always where that point comes in, that I forget which week we talked about this a lot, but whenever you're uncertain about something, even doing your own analysis, you could always bring it up with the class and be like, hey,
Yeah.
what do you all think of this part?
Yeah.
Why do you think this is so tricky for us to figure out?
Yeah.
True.
That kind of thing.
So putting words into your kids' mouths, like just have them talk about it.
Yeah.
That's true.
Wanted to backtrack just a bit to the point about it being unrealistic. I think that's where my article comes in a lot. Just because my article was talking about how teachers, especially if teachers identify as gay or lesbian or bisexual or any of those, then like having a teacher actually come out and then be a positive role model. Not that they're like, you know, always fighting the fight to stand up for people with different sexual and gender identities, but just that if the class just knows and then continues to see them as a normal, regular person who's being a regular teacher no matter what, that alone can be a positive example. And then it was also talking about how even if, you know, you can't be the one to step out and identify as something different than the norm, you could still find positive examples and role models in people that you're either authors that you're reading or people that you're studying in history and stuff, and bringing those to the classroom and not just being like, hey, look, they identified differently from the rest of society and it was okay, but also being like, hey, they were people, look at these things they accomplished and look what they added to society. And one of the big points there was also that there's like 10% of the population or something identifies as other than, you know, cisgender and like straight. So it was like there's a lot of people out there that feel this way, and like starting to bring up people from history and people in your curriculum can help make kids aware of that and prepare them to like interact with people respectfully in the future. So I thought that that was a good way to tie into like when a book is unrealistic, you can bring in a more realistic example.
Have some compare. Yeah, because you can obviously like read different books in a unit and kind of compare them, and there's a lot of stuff you can do with that.
For sure.
And talk about how they were the same and how they're different and how they affect the families and all that. I feel like it's a really good. I was surprised with I think it was the girls, worms, and something article. Yeah, with that, because like she had these big conversations with such young kids, and they were and they were totally able to like handle it. I don't know, like I can't imagine trying to do that. Like I think I would take some of her ideas, but obviously like she had a long ways to go. But that's like such a big topic. But yeah, it was second graders. And I remember I was reading that and I was like, second graders? Like, why are these second graders thinking about that?
Mhm.
Like, that's so awful. They're so young. And then I remembered that in third grade, I had like really similar stuff happen. Like some girl that I was friends with said to one of the girls I was friends with that like she needed to go on Jenny Craig. And I did not know what that meant. I was like, what? And then I remember going home and asking my mom and she told me what it was. And then like, I can't remember if I ever said anything to her, if it ever came up again. But that just reminded me that like, oh wait, like that does happen at that young of an age. Like I thought I was like, no, they're second graders. That's not happening, but totally is.
I know. I don't like reflecting on my own, like in second grade, like I don't remember that being an issue, but I don't know if that was just for me. Like, I don't know if that was still really prevalent and like, or if it's gotten worse, like as time's gone on. I don't know. What was your?
I mean, I was thinking like, oh, maybe it's just this new day and age, but I don't think that article was like that new.
Right.
I think it was like probably older than when I was in elementary school. So.
Yeah.
Well, and like Jenny Craig isn't like a huge thing anymore. I
Oh.
don't think.
No.
Yeah.
I know my roommate, she nannies for a family, and it makes me sad because they have a meal plan for their daughter because they think that she's overweight, and so they're like very strict about it. And I don't even know that she's in 5th grade yet, but it just makes me so sad that like they like already have her like watch. Like I don't know if it's because the doctor, I don't know any of that background stuff, but it's still just like sad that like. Because like I've seen a picture of her and she doesn't look like overweight or anything. Like she looks healthy and normal, but I don't know if like it's just sad to me to hear that because I'm like, are they trying to get her to the point of what like society says is beautiful and like fit and healthy and skinnier? I don't know. Like it's just interesting to hear about that going on and like gosh, like I don't know how the girl feels like about her parents like monitoring everything she eats and like. That's probably gonna carry on with her forever now because of that, like happening at such a young age. Like I just like, it just makes me so sad.
Well, and like the lesson that she did on the Barbie, like analyzing the Barbie and everything.
Yeah.
Like, I really liked that part of it and everything, because that Barbie is such a like iconic like toy growing up and everything, and it's never analyzed. Yeah. And so I liked how she had the boys and girls analyze it.
Yeah, I like that the boys were there too.
Yeah, because I think that was important to do that and like
have them realize that that's also like because boys need to know that also is not the standard of a body that they should be expected.
Right.
The only thing that I didn't necessarily like, and obviously we weren't there and didn't see everything that happened, was that it was really focused on girls and not necessarily on boys.
Yeah, which is what that other article kind of.
Right, of just like focusing.
They could have had a Ken doll too, because that's completely unrealistic as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Like Superman or something like that. Like, being like this tough guy or whatever. Just because when they also did the day where they were like in school 50 years ago or something.
The boys
like that.
all loved it.
Yeah, exactly. Like I think that it kind of made it a little bit skewed. And like I understand like. We weren't there or whatever, but it was just kind of like this is such a big issue that I think that it needed to be like planned a little bit more, or maybe just this article didn't depict it very well, but like it just seemed like it was
seem a little thrown together.
Yeah, it was just, and obviously it was like over a long period of time, but it made me think about like how challenging that issue is because you're not only just dealing with one gender stereotype or stereotypes, you're dealing with two, and that's a lot. And I mean, it's just overwhelming just to think about. Like, and I mean, even now, like we have this, like we say that we're like all, go like no stereotypes or all that kind of stuff. Like we are aware of them or whatever. But there is like the riddle. Have you heard of it? Like I think we've maybe talked about it. Where the doctor.
Yeah. Exactly. I never considered that. It was
right.
the mom.
Like, but we say that we are like, oh, we're so whatever, and then we can teach about it. But then we still have that mindset when it comes down to it because that's how we grew up, like
right
and everything. So I don't know. I thought that the Barbie was good. I didn't really like the school play thing. I saw the point to it, but didn't really.
I just like at times I was a little confused about. I felt like she was going in a lot of different directions. I was like, wait, what are we focusing on? Like, is it the body image? Is it the gender roles? Is it?
Well, like the worms, like that's just
that's just okay. Play with worms. Like, and that annoyed me a little bit too because as a kid I played with worms.
Yeah.
Just because you're a girl doesn't mean that you're not gonna pick up worms.
Yeah. Right.
I feel like boys are also, not all boys like worms.
Yeah.
Some boys don't like to get dirty. Like
Yeah.
it's just that's the matter of the fact.
Yeah.
I think. So, I did the one on the girls' worms and for the jigsaw, and then it asked like how gender roles affect my life and like how it affects just the life of society and like just gender roles in general. And I think that it wasn't until like my studies here that really gender roles was like a thought in my mind. Like I remember it kind of was in high school just because I played a lot of sports, and so we would play basketball. Like our basketball games were usually after the boys' basketball games. Sometimes they were before, but it was like there would be nobody there. And then like the boys' basketball game would come after, and just like tons of people would come. Or like it was the boys' basketball game, and as we were warming up, everyone would leave. Yeah. And it was just like,
That's
okay,
sad.
see ya. Like, and like it was totally.
That was a trend at my high school too, though. Like the girls would play before, but then the guys would play like at 7:00. So it would just everyone would start flooding in, and I never like thought about like why.
Yeah.
Like why doesn't everyone just support everybody?
Right. Well, and like as a basketball player, like I understood like the boys are a lot more fun to watch because it's faster. It's they're bigger. It's just a more fun thing to watch. But also it's just like as a girl playing, it was just like. Our gym was quiet. Well, not like quiet, but comparatively, it was quiet. And so I was thinking about, just how that has affected my life, and if it has, or if it just brought more of an awareness of like, girls in sports and stuff. And I just heard a thing recently on Serena Williams, and they were doing this like argument on whether or not they could call her the best player in the world or the best female player in the world. Like if they needed to add that female part of it in there. And it was an interesting thing because some people were like, well, you can say she's the best player in the world, but because boys and girls play so differently, you can't compare them. Which I also like agreed with, like it's a different thing. But then when some people say like, well, she's the best female player in the world, clearly she couldn't beat like a guy or something, then that's where that female word comes into like a tricky situation where those stereotypes are more prevalent. So I don't know. I thought it was interesting and just like, it's still such a big topic, just especially through sports and
That's very true. I feel like, and is it a common thing for it to be like guys marked as the best player and females to be marked as the best female player, or is it women are the best female player, men are the best men? Because I've never heard like the best male player.
That's true.
I've never heard that.
That's true.
Because it's just like automatically like they're better than females, which they probably are. Like I mean, like when it comes down to it, they probably they're made different. They're like when it's
stronger naturally.
A lot of the time.
But I mean, Serena Williams plays any regular guy around here, she's gonna like kick his butt, like type of thing. But like, but comparatively to like the other professional male players, like it's gonna be different.
They're taller and
So it's just like a harsh and hard, I guess, to like compare. And so just like that gender stereotyping and acceptance and gender equity and all that kind of stuff is such a huge issue because it. Like, there's a point of where, like, let's all be equal, but then there's a point of, like, males and females are not equal. Like, when it comes down to it, like, their bodies are completely different and everything. So.
When you're talking about that, it kind of made me think of, like, how gender roles kind of played in my life. And I was like, like, I agree with you. Like, I didn't really, like, start thinking about them until I came to Western. But then I, like, kind of thought about it a little bit more, and I remember, like, so my dad grew up in a very, like, his mom worked and cooked and cleaned the house, and his dad went to work. And then his dad came home, and the mom like fed him and gave him his drink, and that was like it. And so my dad's kind of like that too, because he's pretty old. My parents had me pretty old. And so as a kid, actually, like still now, but like all through growing up, I'm always like, I don't like to cook. Like, I just don't like doing it. And my dad's always like, you need to learn how to cook if you're going to cook for your husband someday. Or like, you need to start like cooking because you need to cook for your husband. And I've always been like, no, I don't want to. Like, he can cook for me. And so like, even from a young age, I remember like thinking like that. And so I guess I realized that a little early on, but I kind of wonder like how, because there's other stuff other than cooking too that he's like kind of said like little comments like that about. So I wonder how that's affected me. But I was pretty happy to think that like as a kid, even I was like, no, he can do it for me. Like I don't want to do it. So
yeah, and I think that like now, you know, we're obviously have a long ways to go and all this kind of stuff. But like I think that there's like a really big increase in the like toys that are produced and everything that with like gender.
Yeah, like at my store that I work at, there's, I guess you don't need it to be different colors, but we have like this toolbox set, and there's like one that's blue and green and one that's pink and purple.
Yeah.
And so like, I guess that is kind of in its own way, kind of like progressive, but then also not at the same time, because like can't the girl just use the pink and blue one?
Yeah.
But then at the same time, it does like go towards that like audience a little more, like young little girls are gonna be, ooh, pink and purple tools, like So I don't know if that's good, like if that's progressive, or if that's a stereotypical.
That's a good point, because it still is like stereotyping like what colors they should buy.
Right. But those kids are being exposed to more of a like acceptance of gender, like each
job.
Like more so than I feel like we were, or books.
Oh, yeah,
you know, like there's more books published now than that have, you know, the girl as the superhero or the
like Peter Pan Princess.
Yeah, exactly. Or, you know, a boy, you know, doing ballet or something like that, where there's a, you know, outside the norm, I guess, or stereotype. So I think that. No.
Not yet. Not quite.
Let's see.
It's been a half hour.
Okay. I think the last article is the Bill of Rights for Girls. And
oh yeah, I wanted to hear what you all thought of to add.
I have something that is kind of like important to me. So like the part, like I didn't have necessarily anything to add, more something to change, because when she talks about like, oh, the right to like your body, like I agree with that, but I think it should have focused more on like all types of bodies. Instead, she kind of was like, a woman's body is supposed to have fat on it, or like those models have little girl bodies. And I understand that she's trying to make like most girls feel better about their bodies, but there are still girls like me who are really skinny naturally, and like that doesn't make me feel good, because it's like, oh, so like, do I not have a woman's body? Like, is my body not like good? So I just like thought that she should talk more about like loving your body no matter what size you are, instead of like putting down girls of a different size to make you feel better about your own. Because like it goes both ways, and I understand like it's more of an issue for girls to feel like overweight and feel like fat and like they're not skinny enough, but there are still, like, when you say those kind of things, there's still people who are affected by that.
Right.
It's totally true.
There's always like another side. It reminded me of I don't even remember the song. There's a song.
There's the by Meghan Trainor.
Yes.
Yes, I hate that song because she always says that.
Yeah, and like she's so like, talking about how that's better to have curves and like that. I get totally, like you were saying, like where she's coming from, and that she's trying to be supportive of those who do and can't control that, but then like she does need to at least think about like the other side of those who,
like, she literally calls them skinny bitches, and I'm like, thanks.
Yeah.
It's not like, it's not everyone who's skinny is like purposely starves themselves.
No,
and, like,
exactly. And
something that I thought of while I was reading that was, I feel like, so we went from this like everyone needs to be skinny, and like social media like bombarding you with like, you know, this is what the perfect body looks like and everything. And then we've kind of started to transition, at least in my eyes, to like accept your body, blah, blah, blah. And I feel like sometimes that gets taken too literally, and like I feel like for me, it would be teaching kids just to be
How
healthy,
Yeah.
like healthy habits. Because I feel like just accepting who you are, like accepting the way your body is like saying to those, because I mean, we're in America, we have an obesity problem.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I mean, that is not like hidden
Yeah.
secret or
Everyone
whatever.
in the world knows this.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
so it's like, if you're telling all of these girls just love your body, well, it's like, if they're gonna love their body, like they need to be like a healthy body,
about it.
like
Like
instead
treating
of
it
just,
well. Yeah.
right, like, you know, everyone has a different body type and everything, and like holds their weight differently, and like
Right.
it's totally understanding. And you know, some like some, what am I trying to say? Anyways, I just lost that train of thought. But yeah, that's what I thought. It was just more. It feels like it's starting to encourage like that, like overweight.
Yeah.
And everything in some circumstances,
Right.
rather than
They're just,
encouraging
like,
just like healthy habits, healthy eating habits, healthy lifestyle habits. And so that's one thing that like I feel like I would change is like love your body, but like
in a
or
healthy
add
way.
like
Yeah.
add the healthy part into it. And like then you have to define healthy and like all that kind of stuff. And then you go into like you're being obsessed with being healthy, because
Yeah, I have
it's
a lot
true
of friends
that
are
like
that.
you know, like all, you know, I have a couple friends who like they're tiny and they're just obsessed with like,
like
they're not
counting
dieting,
calories.
but like
Mhm.
yeah,
Your
they're
friends,
just
do
like
the count calories and stuff.
I don't have like any
I've
friends
had
that
my
do-
roommate do that before. And
Same.
I'm just
My
like,
roommate is
I don't
very
even
big.
look at calories. Like
Yeah.
if it looks like it's not healthy, then I will or I won't eat it depending on what I feel. But
Right, yeah.
it's just like I don't. Yeah.
It's definitely can be a problem with some people. Like
Yeah.
I've heard a lot about, and I understand in like certain situations, like counting your calories and macros. And I know a lot of people, especially in college right now, are trying to like get really fit. So they go to the gym, so they need to make sure they're eating enough calories or like a certain amount so they can gain whatever type of muscle they want.
Mhm.
But and I think it's very like a college focused thing right now, because you're like at the time where your body can be at like its best, so people want to make their body like be at its best.
Right.
But there are just like times where it's like too far. Like my roommate, she like would not lick a peanut butter spoon because it wasn't in her like macros for the day, so she like gave it to me to lick, and I was like,
Oh my god. Just
Oh my
enjoy
God.
yourself.
yeah, and
Yeah.
like that
Oh my
was like
gosh.
something that I was like, oh my goodness, like this is a problem. Like
Right.
this
Yeah.
isn't.
I think it's also hard too, like as you get older, obviously your body changes, like,
Yeah.
and it's, you know, we're at a point too where our bodies are changing into this more adult,
Yeah.
like, and so I think that's really hard for people to, especially girls, to accept and to like understand why that's happening, like
Yeah.
just what's it called, like biologically,
Yeah.
just like that's how the body evolves, like
Yeah.
through life type of thing. And so I think that's also another like hard part of, you know, you target middle and high school, but it's also like, you know, college and like those early 20s, like that's when also a lot of, because you're around people who are skinny or who do look like that
Or like
whatever.
especially all the guys at the gym are hecka buff, and I can't imagine like
Yeah.
being a guy going in there and being like,
right.
like I want to
Right.
get buff too. Also, that kind of reminds me of something that I talked about in my thing. I wanted to mention really quick is like I've also seen kind of like a double standard, even like within myself. So like kind of what I wrote about. I don't know if you read it, but for instance, was like if I'm like this is kind of like hypothetical, but it's happened in a certain kind of way before. But if I'm with like my guy friends and like they say something about a girl's body or something, like a girl that walks by, like let's say she's really attractive and really fit and everything, they say something like I would think that's kind of disrespectful, and like they never say stuff like that around me, and I don't know if they say it when I'm not there, but like they just kind of know like, oh, you're not supposed to do that, like that's disrespectful to the woman and stuff. But I feel like if girls say like, oh man, that guy has like really nice muscles, or like that guy's really buff and hot, like it's not a thing that people really think is like a disrespectful thing to say. And I was kind of thinking about it. I was like, well, if one of my guy friends was like pointing out some girl, then I would like start comparing myself to them. I'd be like, oh, like I don't look like that, so am I still attractive? But I don't wonder if like guys feel that way too, if you point out like
Yeah.
attractive guy, like are they like, oh, I don't look like that, like,
Yeah.
and I don't know because I haven't talked to my guy friends about that, but
It's an
just
interesting
something
point.
that-
Like if they have that pressure as like girls do.
Yeah.
Or not.
like
Or
do they
if
have
they
that
don't
thought process, or yeah,
I don't know.
I mean, I feel like it is like with girls too. Some girls really care about it. Some girls just
True.
don't
Not
like.
as much, yeah.
True.
I
It's
am
probably
how
to
I
each
am,
their
like-
own.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, I
That's a good point.
think that it's not like it's not like we're two different species when it comes
Yeah.
to that. I feel like there's still that variation of like some guys are overly obsessed, some guys are
some-
underly obsessed,
Yeah,
and
true.
some
Same
they're in
with
the middle.
girls,
Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
so
I'd agree with that.
yeah, I just think that it's like such a hard thing to do, and I think this is also like where like I come from. Like I grew up playing so many sports and like grew up with parents as PE teachers and stuff like that. That is just like that idea of just like teaching health and teaching like a healthy lifestyle from a young age can do so much
Yeah.
like power and wonder like in a person's life, just because it doesn't having like read the articles about like kids saying like, oh, I need to diet in like second grade or whatever, and like for me, I didn't ever look at like myself in like a picture or anything until college of thinking like, oh, I in this way compared to everyone else.
Yeah.
I just didn't like ever think about that, and like I think I have my parents to thank for that, because they didn't ever
Highlight
they
on that.
really taught us like
And it's also like what your peers say growing up too. Like I don't think I would have ever thought anything about myself, but it's like what people say to me all the time. That I'm like, oh yeah. Like even literally a couple of days ago, it's just they'll just make comments. Like when I was younger, people used to be like, oh, can I pick you up? And I'm like, just because I'm small doesn't mean you can just like ask me to pick me up.
That's a good
And
point.
like even like 2 days ago, one of my friends, he was just like, you know what? And I was like, what? And he's like, I think you might be the smallest adult I know. And I was like, cool. Like,
Thanks.
Well,
yeah.
that's
And it's like
old.
people have to point it out all the time. And I'm like, I understand it's new to you, but like I hear this all the time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's getting really old.
Yeah.
And
That's
so like when
interesting.
peers point it out a lot too, I think that
peer
happens.
influence is
Yeah.
such a huge thing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That could be a muddy question. How could we
Yeah.
address that in the school? Like,
Because it's not even negative things, it's just pointing it out as well. Like
yeah.
making comments
Um,
that make people like think about stuff, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we should also talk about Aristotle and Dante with Secrets of the Universe.
Seriously, I'm waiting for that because I love that book.
I
Um,
really liked it too.
the question was how can we
Like
teach
like assist kids with hearing.
Yeah, all peer interactions.
Like awareness
towards
of
bodies.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like peer interactions specifically focused on their bodies or
I think it's kind of like with the family thing. There's all different types of family. There's all different types of bodies. Like,
right. But the same thing is like sometimes I feel like that's such a hard balance, because it's like you don't want to bring something up that isn't already in their mind.
That's
Like
true,
if it's not in their minds, you don't want to bring it up and
I guess it's
cause
if you
a
hear it.
subconscious like
yeah. If you notice it in the classroom, then
like
you're like,
if
okay.
my teacher would have noticed that, like, hey, these girls are making comments about another girl about Jenny Craig, then maybe have a talk about it.
Right.
Yeah.
But then also there's going to be other kids in the class who never thought about
they're
it.
like, what?
And then they'll be like, oh, wait, should that be something that I'm worried about?
well, I feel that way even coming here with a lot of things, which I think is good for like what age I'm at, but like I used to think of so much less. Like
Yeah.
I just used to be so like
Yeah.
what I saw was what I saw, and I didn't think any deeper about it, and
Yeah.
like it's just
Right.
changed so much in that way. And now I like feel
Which is
like
good at this age.
yeah, exactly.
you know
But
how
at a
to,
young
like,
age, I don't know if it is good to be thinking. I mean, I would say some probably think it is, because then they're
grow up
prepared
more.
when they like they grow up with that mindset. But then I guess my personal opinion is like, no, just let them just think the way a kid would think and leave it
Yeah,
at that. I
yeah.
guess I don't know. I don't.
Sadly, there's enough things I think around them happening that sway the way they would think normally.
Yeah.
Like there's enough, especially now with social media and like
Yeah.
how big all the technology stuff is. They're even like exposed to more images than ever before.
Right.
So
That's
like they're
true.
like even the junior hires I know are already growing up so much faster than the junior hires that I was. And that's like a
good
barely that's
point.
like 10
oh my
years
gosh,
difference.
you're right.
Like all the junior hires that I see on like social media that I like have,
Tell
they
what
look
age
like
they
they're
are.
like in their 20s, and I'm
Yeah.
like, oh my god,
Yeah.
Yeah.
how?
Yeah. That's a good point.
So I don't know.
I always
maybe making
wondered
them
why,
more-
and now that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Just like what they're exposed to and the
Yeah.
way they want to. Yeah. Yeah. I know some of their styles are like the same as like college age students. I'm
Exactly.
like, what?
You're like, there's so much
How?
makeup. I'm like,
Yeah.
man, you're gonna get a little bit older and then realize, oh wait, this sucks.
Such a
I'm
waste
gonna,
of
yeah.
time. Not gonna, yeah, exactly.
Aristotle and Dante.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a big chunk of it. So.
Yeah, it's 369 pages. To be
I-
exact.
What the? Oh. I
That's
really liked this book. I had to, so like I read through it in about like one day. Like I had to get it done, but also it was like interesting, so I kept reading it.
Wow, good job.
Thank you. But I had a little bit of difficulty just because I don't know. I feel like I would have related more if I was a teenager because like I don't know, teenagers are like angsty and like everything is a really big deal to them and everything's like super dramatic. And so like sometimes when I was reading this, I was like, this is too much emotion and drama to handle. Like you're so angsty and thinking about everything so deeply, and I'm not like in that mindset anymore. So like that's a lot to handle. So there was like times where I just like put it down and I was like, wow, this is a lot. Like your guys are really really a lot to handle.
Yeah.
But I did like I thought that if I was a teenager, I would have related to that a lot. Like I would have been like, oh, that's how I feel too, and like it would have been
just the feelings they have as they're going through the
Exactly.
transition from just being boys to men in high school and all that.
And then another thing, I really liked how it wasn't just like white LGBTQ. Like it wasn't just like oh, a minority, but they still have white privilege. Like it was a two minority, like cultural minority and sexual orientation minority.
Yeah.
And so I like thought that was really interesting because I've never read anything like that.
Right.
But I also haven't read a lot. But it was another like cool aspect to it, especially because like Dante was always really okay with who he was. Like he really liked who he was. He was confident in himself. And then obviously Aristotle wasn't. But I found it really interesting how Dante was really like comfortable with his sexual orientation, but not his culture. Whereas Ari was a lot more like comfortable in his culture and being Mexican, but like he wasn't comfortable with his sexual orientation for a long time. And like they kind of helped each other with both of those things. I thought that was really interesting how they balanced that. And then so I'm just gonna like say everything I thought about it, and then you guys can say yours just because it's easier.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is I was a little surprised that there wasn't like more to Ari's feelings about his gender, like his actual, like how he identified, because I don't know, throughout the whole book he kept talking about like, oh, I'm not like other boys, like maybe boys are like this, I'm not like this, like he just kept talking about boys in general. And so like I thought that he was gonna have more of like a gender thing as well, not just sexual orientation, if that makes sense. Just because I was like, you just keep talking about like not feeling like a boy almost, like what they should be like. But I guess I was just kind of going off of how Dante wasn't like other boys, and then I thought there was like a lot to be left to ask when I finished the book.
I was kind of I'm not confused, but like I for a moment was like unsure. Like I thought that was going to be like the end of it, like how.
Yeah, I thought that was going to be the end.
But I also at the same time was like kind of not sure how it was going to come to that, because I just felt like
Ari seemed very
Ari was so like and like tough guy, like wanting to be a tough guy, but I don't know if that was just like to show like that he was trying to mask that and think like trying to like put off like, okay, I'm feeling this way, but I'm trying not to because it's not right. And just think about how it was taking place was it in the 80s? Yeah, so it was a completely different time, and so there was that like social pressure too of like probably being even way less accepted than even now, and so it was just like really interesting to see throughout like how much of what he was feeling he was pushing away and being what he was supposed to look like and do. But
and I was kind of confused by that too.
But then when he was around Dante, like then that's where like his true self would like shine through and everything.
But at the same time, I thought that as the reader, we kind of had an inside look, but the inside look never showed us that Ari was feeling that way. Like it always talked about how he was angry.
Yeah, like.
But like I don't know.
Yeah, that
I,
was,
knew, I
like-
knew that's where it was going towards, but I wasn't like, was it kind of like, oh, the reader doesn't really know because he doesn't really know? Is that kind of like what that was kind
That's
of
what
about?
I got out of it.
Is
Yeah.
okay.
But does that mean that the reason he's been angry his whole life is because of that? Because I feel like it didn't, because he's always been angry. But I feel like that wasn't
Yeah.
anything that would have ever come to his mind until Dante was with him.
Well, a lot of it had to do with his like family and his brother too, and
Yeah,
a lot of
right.
that started getting resolved towards the end as well,
Yeah.
which like helped him find that environment where he could be
Oh.
comfortable with his sexual identity.
That's true.
Yeah, that makes sense. So then, like, yeah, have that problem in his life of anger kind of start to go away, and then like to think more about himself and like who he was. I thought it was interesting what like tied to like what he ended up identifying as in the end was like what was like a hint of that was like his insecurity of like himself like throughout the whole book and like how he just was so insecure about him and everything about him. And so I feel like that kind of ties to the possibility of how some may feel with that and like why
And,
he
like,
was
the
so
anger.
and why he was so against like accepting like what he really was. And
I mean, that kind of reminds me about that video that we watched about the one, I forget, what was her name? The girl, it was the first video.
Josie.
Josie.
oh, Josie.
Yeah, about
I'm
how
good with
she was acting out all the time in class and always angry and like had a hard time, couldn't ever focus, was throwing tantrums all the time until they figured that out. And then so smooth, just like complete 180.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like that anger that builds up with not knowing, like, why do I feel like why do I feel different? Like, what?
Yeah.
And I think that's something that like a lot of like people can relate to, just like differently. It's
Mhm.
hard to like know what you're feeling sometimes. It's hard to know why you feel a certain way, and that can be angering, and people can lash out because it's like, well, why do I feel like this? With like lots of things.
I think for me, I'm kind of changing the direction for me.
Yeah.
But for me, I really liked the book, and I think it was like a good book. But I could see where it was going from the very
Yeah,
beginning, and it kind of made me like
read it differently.
Yeah, but I also wish that like, and I know there's probably a book out there that's like this, but I kind of was not upset about it, but like, you know, kind of disappointed in the fact that it was just like a boy who feels different than other boys, like, has to be gay.
Yeah,
Like,
like
there's,
it's
like,
not
that-
just the guy who fits in with all the other guys.
Right, because I feel like there's, you know, like smart, intelligent, like just quiet guys who feel different that, you know, are heterosexual or whatever, like that don't necessarily fit in as gay, but, you know, that aren't the superhero type of thing. That, I don't know, I just kind of was like, well, he's, you know, they harped so much on like how different he felt and how frustrated he was and all that kind of stuff. And it was just like, well, you could call it from the beginning that, you know, him and Dante were going to be together at the, you know, or, you know, that was my prediction or something like that. And so like it made me, and I think that it's like really good, like, you know, there needs to be books like that, and there needs to be, you know, LGBTQ books for all ages and everything. I just felt like it was, you know, they harp so much on like, oh, he's different, he's quiet, he's, you know, doing all, he doesn't have many friends and stuff. And I think that there are boys and guys that are like that aren't gay.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a like hard thing that it's like, okay, well, if I'm different and I feel different, then does that mean that I am like,
And
I don't
something
know.
too that I was kind of thinking about, like along with that, is and then I thought about it too with like In Our Mother's House, with how the like lesbian couple was portrayed, like the way they look, for instance. It's just like hard because we're looking at these one stories, but these are just one story, and there's others, and they're not saying that this is the only way that it is just because we read that one book.
Yeah.
But like that's how we're like looking at it right now.
It kind of goes with that point of that article that
Like,
I read about how it's all fictional, imaginative, like view of it. It's not informative of like what it all is going to be like.
And then on the other hand as well, like we were also getting a look at Ari from his view, thinking about it, like looking at him from like the view of other people in the high school, he seemed to be just kind of like, I don't know, he didn't really seem to be like that outstandingly different from people. Like the way other people saw him, I don't think he was as different as we were portrayed him to be from his own perspective, because he was feeling what he felt on the inside. Whereas like the other people just seemed to like, he was there, like he like kind of had some friends, like he had school friends. He like there were people, like people thought he was cool. He like got in fights. Like I feel like he was probably viewed more like everyone else than we were, like we saw, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That's true.
Another thing from the story that I really, really, really loved was the parent involvement. I feel like in all books that I've read, or like most stories I've read with any theme, it's just like either the parents are like sucky parents, like basically any Disney Channel thing ever, the parents are awful. Like they just aren't there, or like the parents literally aren't in the story is what happens a lot in other teen novels that I've read, or young adult novels or anything like that. So I just loved how like the story focused so much on like this love that the parents had for the sons and how accepting they were of them, like even before, like they just loved their kids so much, and that was really nice to see in a story, and like how the kids love their parents so much and had that strong relationship, because I feel like that's something you don't see in youth novels very often.
And it wasn't perfect, it was realistic.
Exactly.
Like they still
had their fight.
They would
conflicts.
butt heads and all. Yeah. That's
I think that might have been one of my favorite parts about that book.
Me too.
Yeah.
I think one of my favorite parts was just like how it was written in terms of like the sentence syntax, because it wasn't these like long drawn out sentences. It was like thoughts. Like
it was so interesting. I hadn't read a book
talked.
anything like it before. Like it was a whole new way of reading for me, and I thought it was really interesting.
Their conversations were really interesting too. It was a lot of just like, you know, you're weird. Yeah, I am weird. Like,
yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay.
Or like when it was Ari's thoughts, like it was just like short and choppy and like you know, and I just think it's like it was so realistic. Like one thing that stood out to me was like when those guys were like teasing him on the bike at the very beginning of the book, and he's like, and they kept doing it, so I flipped him off again.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like it was just like it was all like periods, like after every single thing.
Yeah.
And so it was
I
just
did really like that too.
Yeah.
I just found it really interesting, like, too, how they kept saying, and then they discovered this about the universe, and they discovered this about the universe, and then they discovered this about the universe. And, like, I feel like that was a really, like, romanticized part of the book. And, like, honestly, a lot of the times I was like, wait, what did they discover? I don't understand. Like, one thing happened. How do they understand everything about this topic now? But, again, I think it was really realistic from the point of teenagers. Like, the way they think, how, like, honestly angsty and everything is such a big deal to them. And I feel like that book really like, got that across. And if I were a teenager reading it, I feel like I would relate to it a lot.
Yeah.
Because I, like, remember having, like, these big, like, dramatic thoughts and, like, everything being so important and such a big deal. And I guess now I'm just kind of like, eh.
Well, yeah, exactly.
I got more important things to think about.
Yes, it's true.
I'm honestly still that way. So that book was like, this is how my brain works.
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't not been like that for very long. It's been like honestly like a couple months ago.
I feel like it's like this like school year or this last school year for me. It's like become more that way. And my roommate and I have even talked about it because she has a sister that's, I don't know, she's a sophomore in high school or something, but like she talks to her or goes home and talks to her and she talks about her life and she's just like, oh my gosh, like it doesn't matter. Like that's not going to matter in a month for you, but you're just like, just thinking so much about it. But
and I mean, there's definitely still things in my life that I'm like that with.
Totally.
But
there's another nutty question, maybe. Like, how can we validate what kids are going through and the fact that that drama is so real for them?
Because it is. That's like why it's like teen suicide is such a big thing, because they literally cannot see past. Like, I've watched quite a few like little documentaries, and I'm like, to myself, I'm like, okay, I feel like that's not that big of a deal. Like, I understand it is. Like, you're gonna move on so easily. Like, you have so much of your life left that's not gonna focus on this at all. And I just, like, can never understand that. But, like, to them, like, in that moment, that is the biggest thing. like
everything.
yeah, and I feel
Yeah.
like I forgot what it was that I was reading, but like this guy or watching, I don't know, remember, but he was talking to a teenager or something, saying like, yeah, well, one time I got like a C in my class, and I like when I was in high school, and or junior high or something like that, and he's like, and I wanted to kill myself because I knew my parents would be so disappointed in me. And so like he's like, I couldn't face the idea of going home and telling them, or like them knowing this, and I'm just like, that's just such a small part of your life, like.
Well, and that goes with that article, Out Front, maybe, where, or no, I don't remember, but it was like the one, oh yeah, consider, or could overuse of suicide statistic be hurting vulnerable queers?
Yeah,
and just like,
that
I had
one.
never thought about that, how, like, because it is, all you hear is about suicide, like
Yeah.
that, and so it's just
Mhm.
like, well, like, yeah, that would be impactful, like, because like as a teenager, you're still like a sponge, you're still like a little kid,
Yeah.
where you're
Mhm.
influenced very heavily based on what's around
Mhm.
you, and if that's all that's surrounding you,
Mhm.
like, and you're part of that culture, like that's gonna be huge,
Mhm.
like,
Yeah.
and so I had never like considered that impact of not even like suicide statistics with queers, like, but just like suicide statistics,
In
or just like
general, yeah.
stats in general, like, I mean, any stats, or
Mhm.
like girls with eating disorders, like that's a huge statistic that
Yeah.
you hear
Mhm.
all, 1 in 3 girls have an eating disorder, or
Right.
whatever it is, like, I mean, if that's all you hear, then it's like, oh well, like, if you're vulnerable, like, you're gonna fall to that,
Yeah.
and everything.
Right.
And so I had never like considered how just like stats in general, and how bombarded, how much like we are bombarded by those stats, and just like
Mhm.
the impact that we have. And then it made me think about like, how am I gonna know as a teacher? And I kind of feel like this is a muddy question, but just like, how am I gonna know, like, if I'm teaching, oh, I have it somewhere. I want to do the wording right. Like, how will I know that I'm teaching awareness and understanding of gay issues, like, correctly, or giving it justice enough?
Yeah,
Like,
without like pushing kids towards
right.
anything.
Or what if, like, then, and this is all like the well, what if, and you could go on
Yeah.
forever about what ifs, but like, what if this school is the opposite of that high school that the teacher was in, where they were really accepting of like everything? What if they're opposite? What if they disapprove of that, or
Yeah.
something like that? Then what? Like, you go against the grain and you do all these things, but like, you're still, I don't know. It was
And
just
like,
like
what
a
does that
hard,
mean? Like the principal, for instance, like if they don't agree with what you're saying,
right.
like you're going against that.
You're going against your boss. And
Yeah.
it's like, we've been taught like through Western education to like, do that, to stand up for what you believe
Yeah.
in, to, be that voice, and,
Yeah.
one voice can be huge,
Right.
and stuff. But it's just like, it's still scary to me to like, of that tough situation of like, am I going to be doing this correctly? What if like, those tough situations come, like, how am I going to respond to it? And so like, I think like most of the readings that we had this week, like really like made me think about like, how am I going to react to that kind of stuff? Or like, how would I address that given these certain situations and
Right.
stuff like that? One quote that I really liked was that if we acknowledge gay people's contributions in every area of our society, young people's perceptions of what it means to be gay can go beyond the often threatening issue of sexuality.
Yeah.
And I just really like that, because I think it's like a really good focal point for like gay issues and gender society.
And I like that too with the in Our Mother's House, how that kind of talks about like this is their jobs. Like it talks about like their like part in the society too. Like it's not just like, oh, they are a lesbian couple. It's like, oh, my mom does this and my other mom does this, and like this is how they contribute, and this is how they're just like everyone else. And
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to go back to what you said to how do we react to like issues that do arise, or students that are in crisis and don't know what to do. And it kind of made me think back to the health ed class that we all have to take, and how teachers are like taking on a lot from their students, and it's not all our job. Like,
Right.
it's our job to create a supportive environment, and it's our job to make sure there's no bullying or harassment in the classroom, and that all students are being encouraged. But when stuff like that comes up, like handle it in the moment the best you can by saying, you know, we will find you help and stuff. But then that's also like, you're allowed to be like, this is an area where I don't know how to help you as much, but you know what we have a school counselor, we have a school nurse, we have, you know, other professionals that you can consult with. And
That's a good point.
I feel
Because
like it's
otherwise it
hard.
can feel really overwhelming and burdensome when you can't cover it, all the bases that.
And I feel like it's hard because I think a lot of us who are going into this profession, it's like we just care about the kids so much. So we want to do whatever we can.
Right.
Like we're willing to take on way more than we can ever expect to be able to do just because we want to make sure that everyone is like getting what they need. And I feel like that's kind of an issue that I've heard even with other teachers, that they just take on so much because there's just so much that they feel like they are like you feel like you're just like responsible for everything about this kid's
Right.
life because you get to know that.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that like the LGBTQ culture and like just like teaching that and like just teaching the awareness and everything like that. I think it also goes with like teaching, you know, all the other cultures, like all the multicultural literature that we've been talking about. Like, you know, that's like a, you know, because I'm white and I'm, you know, all of the like who, yeah, where I come from, it's just like, you know, it's, you have to do it right. Like, and I think that's just like a big pressure that we like put on ourselves of, you know, the kids aren't going to know the difference, but like it's important to teach it right so that their ideas are
Exactly.
Right.
It would be awful to like send kids with the wrong idea.
right. But
But it's probably
we turned
gonna
out fine, so
Yeah.
like,
Exactly. Did any of you watch that video of that like one BuzzFeed video of like what if I do like my body or like whatever that one was, like what if I do
What if I am beautiful?
What if I am beautiful?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like looking, I like paused it so I could read all the song lyrics, and because they're all songs I've heard too, a lot of them, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I never like really thought about that. Like so often we just like girls just take like the validation from guys. Like you don't need to like those songs just make it so like the guys, it's supposed to be like this romantic thing, like, oh, you are beautiful, like I know you are, you don't think you are. But at the same time, like girls should just know that they're beautiful without needing that validation from the guys.
I read an article recently and I shared it with my sister, and it was like this girl, she like started it on Twitter and then wrote a full article about it, just an opinion article, but she's like, you know, she noticed that some of her guy friends, if they complimented her and instead of saying, like reacting like, oh my gosh, thank you, people never tell me that, if she went, yeah, I know, they would like get mad. They'd be like, what do you mean you know? I'm trying to be nice to you. Why are you like being bitchy about it?
Yeah.
And she's like, no, like I just already know my hair looks nice today, or I already know I look good in this outfit. I don't need you to tell me that.
Yeah.
And like, you know, she wasn't like being, you know, over the top about it. Like I already knew that, like snap finger, but like, yeah, thanks. I woke up and I already knew that. And then they'd like be like, no, you're not allowed to know that already. You're like supposed to hear it from me.
Yeah.
And I was just like,
yeah. And the thing is that like we all grow up thinking though that like that's like a gentlemanly thing to do. Like they think that they're being genuinely nice, which
and
I mean I compliment.
are
Yeah,
nice.
they are genuinely nice. Yeah.
But you shouldn't rely only on that to
Exactly.
believe
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah. Exactly. I just thought that video was cool.
Well, we definitely have 60 minutes.
Yeah. It's
That's
hard. There's so much in this module.
I
I could
know.
honestly talk for like another forever.